OD deaths this month is 9, suicides 4. And also I had a meeting with the sheriff, and in 2019, we had $1.4 million of street value of drugs taken off the streets in 2019. In 2020, it was 16.4 million. So you see that we're still facing an ongoing problem. First thing on our list is approved minutes. I call on Vice Chair Pettis-Reed.
Mr. Chairman, I've read through the minutes. I haven't found any problems there. I move that they be approved.
I have a motion. Do I have a second? Second, Commissioner Johnson. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Moving on. I'd like to announce a vacancy on the County Board of Equalization. Let me step back here. I need to call roll. So go ahead, Rachel.
Commissioner Cush. Here. Commissioner Stevens.
Here.
Commissioner McAdoo. Here. Commissioner Rather.
Here.
Commissioner Johnson. Here. Commissioner Reed.
Here.
Chairman Harris.
Here.
We have a quorum.
All right, moving on, I'd like to announce a County Board of Equalization vacancy. 3 county vacancies plus an alternate. Current terms to end April of 2022 and a 2-year term to expire April of 2024. Remember, you had to have your applications in 1 week before our next meeting. Moving on, we need to confirm Bishop Wagener to the Central Tennessee Regional Solid Waste Planning Board for a 6-year term to expire on 1/31/28.
So moved.
I have a motion from Commissioner Cush.
Second.
I have a second from Commissioner Rather. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Moving on. We need to confirm 1 spot for the Agricultural Advisory Board vacancy. This position must be filled by 1 farm woman for a 2-year term to expire 12 of 2023. If you look on your iPads, we have one applicant. Her name is Tammy Chandler, and that's the only one that we have.
Mr. Chair, make a motion to accept Tammy Chandler.
We have a motion. Do I have a second? I have a second, Commissioner Reed. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Moving on. Next on our list is to confirm a Conservation Board vacancy. It's a 5-year term to expire February of 2027. We have 1 applicant, John Marshall. So that's the only one that we have for the vacancy. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve John Marshall to the Conservation Board.
Second.
I have a motion. I have a second. Chairman Cush. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Moving on. We need to confirm county coroner vacancy. And that person will be from the mayor. You're the one that confirms our coroner's office, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Do we have anybody?
Mr. Carl. Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Mr. Carl Hudgens is our current coroner, and he would like to remain in that capacity.
Do we have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve Carl Hudgens as our coroner.
I have a motion from Chairman Reed. Is there a second? Second, Commissioner Johnson. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? All right, I want to move on. I want to skip 7 and come back to it. I want to go to 8. Confirm reappointment of Graeme Coates to the Smyrna Rutherford County Airport Authority Laverne representative. They're asking for us to confirm. So is there a motion?
So moved.
Have a commotion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Have a motion. Commissioner Stevens, Commissioner Cush, Chairman Cush. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? All right. Gentlemen, we have to confirm 1 vacancy for PBA, 6-year term to expire January of 2028. We had 2 applicants. They are Jason Smith and John Cunningham. Are these 2 gentlemen here? All right, I'm going to call, I usually go in alphabetical order, so Mr. Cunningham, if you'd like to approach and tell us a little bit about yourself and why you seek this position.
Mic on.
My name is John Cunningham. I'm a lifelong resident of Rutherford County, live in Rockvale, Tennessee. I've been on the same road my whole life and trying to get more involved with my community and want to use my skill set to kind of help grow the county to include the lifelong residents that's been here as well as the new ones moving here.
Are there any questions for Mr. Cunningham? Seeing none, thank you, sir. Mr. Smith? Welcome.
Thank you. My name is Jason Schmidt. I think I've seen all of you guys before. I live at 218 Airport Avenue here in Murfreesboro, and I've been the Chief Executive Officer of Old Time Pottery for the last 3 years. I come before you tonight seeking the privilege of being reappointed to a full 6-year term to the vacant seat I was first appointed to fill by you on the Public Building Authority last winter. I promised when I appeared before you then, previously, that I would always treat the county's taxpayers' money, if it was my own, as a Public Building Authority member, and I've tried to do exactly that over the past year. I believe that my experience as a value-based retail CEO, regularly selecting and negotiating with general contractors, has helped the Public Building Authority in controlling costs for the county as we work through over $30 million of construction contracts for One Stop and the first 4 public safety buildings in the middle of a highly inflationary environment and significant raw material shortages. Along the way, I've learned a tremendous amount from Mayor Ketron, Deputy Mayor Sandlin, Chairman Vaught, and all my fellow members on the PBA, including the fact that I need to start having them help me negotiate the contracts for my future stores. I'm extremely proud of the work that we've done together, and I'm looking forward to applying those lessons over the next 6 years as the Public Building Authority helps the county complete the remaining public safety buildings, a new daycare center, and any other buildings that are required to support the county's rapid growth, while also remaining faithful financial stewards of our taxpayers and their money. Regardless of your decision this evening regarding my reappointment, I want to thank you for the opportunity that you've provided me to fulfill my civic duty by serving on the Public Building Authority over the last year. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have regarding my qualifications or experience on the Public Building Authority, but I also want to be extremely respectful of your time. Thanks.
Any questions? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Smith. Gentlemen, we got 2 names, we're voting for 1. So it'll be a roll call. Go ahead, Rachel.
Commissioner McAdoo,
Mr. Smith.
Schmidt, thank you. Commissioner Stevens,
Schmidt.
Schmidt, thank you. Commissioner Cush,
Cast for Jason Schmidt.
thank you. Rather,
Mr. Schmidt.
Commissioner Schmidt. Commissioner Johnson,
Mr. Schmidt.
Commissioner Reed,
John Cunningham.
and Chairman Harris.
Mr. Cunningham.
Schmidt, too.
Congratulations, Mr. Smith. It'll go through the full commission, and you know how it goes. Mr. Cunningham, thank you for applying. Thank you for giving time to this county. We appreciate it, sir. Moving on, litigation list. Gentlemen, you have a list of all the litigation against us on your iPad. Is there any questions? I had 2. County Attorney. Number 1, I'd like to talk about what's going on with Jernigan versus Rutherford County. And where is this at, as far as where's the process, and what are we looking at?
Yes, sir. In that case, a lawyer in my office, Randy Mantooth, is primarily handling that matter. The parties are engaged in the discovery process, and depositions should be occurring in the near future.
All right, is there any questions on that? Next one I want to talk about is bail bonds versus Rutherford County. Item number 6, can you let us know what's going on with this?
Yes, sir. Happy to. I can't recall from last year. It's been a while that our office filed a motion to dismiss that lawsuit. If you remember, the bonding companies have claimed that the county's pretrial release program deprives them of a livelihood because it reduces the amount of bonds that they can write. And our motion to dismiss that was filed argues that they do not have a constitutional right to that livelihood, and that the lawsuit should be dismissed. That is not a protected business interest, and we are awaiting the court to rule on those motions.
Mr. McAdoo?
You probably need to point it out on the bail bonds that are filing the lawsuit, that it's not all the bail bondsmen, it's just certain ones.
Yes, Commissioner, that's correct. So
Let me clarify that. I apologize. Yes, sir, you're absolutely right, Commissioner McAdoo. It is Grumpy's bail bond versus Rutherford County.
Grumpy's is a plaintiff. There are 3 or 4 other bonding companies that have joined in that lawsuit, but by no means is it representative of the bonding industry as a whole.
Thank you. And the last one I want to talk about is I lost it. I had it there for a second. With the planning, Built-in Investors Group versus Rutherford County, Tennessee. This has got to do with our planning commission.
Yes, sir. That involved the Planning Commission denying a request to build a subdivision out towards Givens Road in that area. The Planning Commission denied it primarily because the infrastructure out there is very inadequate for the development that was going to go in there. The roads were 10 to 12 feet in width. And so anyway, after that denial, the development group filed an appeal to the circuit court here, or Chancery Court rather, I'm sorry, and that matter is currently pending. I'm awaiting responses from the plaintiffs to certain things that I've filed.
Okay. Any questions? Thank you, Nick. Move on.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Rather.
sorry for the interruption. I just want to say this before Mr. Cunningham leaves, that I appreciate your application, and your day and time will come, and your place will be there. Just, you want to serve, apply. Your day, time, and place will be determined. So, thank you for your application.
Good. All right, let's move on. All right, I want to jump around a little bit, gentlemen. So I want to go to item 13. And this is pretty sensitive subject, but I think as your chairman, and I have always preached transparency. So no matter what you can say about me, you know I've always been that. So I feel, as your chairman, that I think that the Juvenile Center needs to report to a board, mayor, or commissioners. Those are 3 opportunities that I see. The reason that I'm doing this is because I feel like that an entire department should answer to the commission, since we are responsible for the leadership of this county. Not all of it, but most of it. And a department should be able, we should be able to more transparency to see what's going on. Now, y'all, everybody understands that we had a lawsuit. And everybody understands that it could have been a major situation. It's still major, but it could have been a lot worse. But I feel like that if we were involved, or if we had more input on this, I think we could have diverted this in some ways. Now, I could be wrong, but I don't feel like I am. Now, I'm wanting to let the county attorney talk, and I just need you to know that there's 3 things that I've considered is allowing the mayor, for that department to answer to the mayor, or for that department to answer to the county commissioners, or we form a board. I lean towards a board that would be over it. So as far as what we can do, I want the county attorney to speak as far as, whether we are able to do anything, and if it does any way had to have a change in the private act. Go ahead.
Thank you, Commissioner. I have started looking into this item, and I continue to do so, and I can relay to the committee kind of my preliminary findings. So, generally speaking, throughout the state of Tennessee, my understanding is that the juvenile detention centers either fall under the juvenile court supervision, or in some counties, they actually are overseen by the local sheriff's office. Now, that might be a byproduct of how their buildings are built, whether they're, for example, they might be connected to or on a campus that is large and has both an adult facility and a juvenile facility. Of course, you have to keep the 2 separate. We can't house juveniles with adults. But that's primarily the organization that you see throughout the state of oversight and supervision of these facilities. Our facility was built sometime in around 2007, 2008 as a joint venture that would house both the juvenile court and the detention facility. One thing that Commissioner Harris, as he mentioned and brought, was the question of, is there a way to restructure that oversight and supervision differently? And if we go on the general premise that state statute seems to be that these facilities are to be under the supervision and oversight of the court, then the question is, well, how do we do something differently if the will of this body is to change that or do something differently? So out of the gate, I haven't found anything that suggests that it's automatically under the county mayor's office, nor have I found anything to suggest that it's automatically under the county commission. So that would leave a board, similar to how your local workhouse has a board that meets, and the county mayor is I think an ex officio member of that workhouse, or a voting member. I don't have that in front of me, but
The county mayor serves as chairman
of that board.
Whoever that county mayor is, and a voting member.
And so that board meets monthly, and the director of that facility reports to the board. And so there's a level of transparency and oversight when you have more than one person that has to oversee and supervise that facility. Now, I don't think that board runs the day-to-day or anything like that. That would be the facility administrator. So if that is the will of the body, the question is, well, can we get there legally? That's what I'm still investigating. My initial reaction is that if we can do it, it probably would have to be done by some sort of private act, because we would be doing something that I'm not aware of anybody does in the state of Tennessee, which doesn't make it bad and it doesn't make it illegal. In fact, it could be something progressive and something new. And so if we can get there legally via a private act to do something different here in our county with that oversight, that's what I'm happy to continue looking into.
So, to my understanding, the county commission gave them the authority in the first place. Why couldn't we take it away?
That's a great question, and I've gotten that question the last few days. And so the only private act that I can find currently in existence was done around the year 2000. And it was that act that took the jurisdiction, or moved the jurisdiction, from the general sessions courts to a juvenile court. It made our juvenile court, and it vested in a juvenile court judge all of that jurisdiction to oversee all of those juvenile types of cases. That private act, the way I read it, it doesn't mention anything about a detention center. It just talks about the court system, and nothing in there talks about the court overseeing the detention center itself. Now, the court certainly has oversight over its own personnel, for example, legal clerks and stuff like that. And your circuit court clerk, Melissa, has oversight over the clerks that are down there because she's the circuit court clerk. But it doesn't speak to anything about the detention facility. So if we are going to do it by private act, I don't think it is an amendment to that one. I think that one stands on its own because it just talks about the juvenile court. I think what we would have to do is do a new private act that deals with the oversight and supervision of the facility and how we want to, the county wants to structure that organization.
Mayor?
I left the county commission in '98. And of course, this facility was not built. We still just strictly had the workhouse and 940, the detention. And so for you guys that were on back, Alan, others that were on back during that period of time, I think it just kind of evolved into having the director at Juvenile report directly to the judge. Commission didn't want anything, and I don't think there's anything anywhere that would say what is the oversight, what is the transparency of that board. There again, Nick, I don't know if it would even require a private act, but if it does, let me tell you that you need to, this committee needs to be acting post haste if you want it to happen this year, because committees will start shutting down at the end of probably this next month, even though final bill cutoff in the General Assembly was this past week. But that's for general bills that have to be filed. But any private act can be submitted as long as the committees are open from a local county or city. So, but the time is getting more narrow because that would go through the Judiciary Committee in the Senate, and there's probably that many more steps in the House. They have a subcommittee and then a regular committee and on and on. So this committee needs to make a decision, do you want to do that? But if you're asking my opinion, I would prefer not to have a direct report. I think that if you're going to do something, do it the way the Correctional Work Center has a board made up of 5 members, the county mayor always being the chairman, and basically, just like this morning, got a report of what was going on with the air conditioning, what was going on with food service, with the security system and cameras, just making sure that you've got some other outside eyes and transparency on the board. Yes, sir.
You got anything to say? None?
I have a
Commissioner Rather?
question. Mayor and Chairman, if we had a board, this came up in public safety recently, and I didn't have time to think about it. The more I thought about it, the more I leaned towards a board like we do with the work center. However, we're dealing with, well, I think now that I asked this, I need some clarification. Are we dealing with juvenile detention, or is there some degree of oversight if we formed a board that would oversee the juvenile judge? There's 2 different things there. So when the judge says in writing that any citations to a juvenile, they're not to be issued anymore, they're to come to the court. So what role would the board play when the judge says, and I saw the paper years ago, that they're to come to her court or the court, let me put it that way. How would the board say you can't do that? How would the board intervene and say we need to step back? Because My understanding is we got a detention center, but then we have the judicial side that has oversight.
Well, I can answer that question. Number one, the judicial side absolutely does not, the board has no say in that at all. That's an elected office, and that's the juvenile judge, which is appointed by the state. So that, the board would have absolutely
No,
nothing.
they're elected by the people.
Sir?
They're elected.
Yep, it's an elected office. So what we're talking about, or what I'm talking about, Michael, is the Juvenile Detention Center. So that is what I want to do. And I'll give you an example if you want to know what I'm talking about. Back in 2018, I think there was a situation where some juveniles were sent to the main sheriff's jail. And if you know anything about that, it's pretty difficult. You can't have adult inmates anywhere around a juvenile inmate. And I'm not saying whether it's right or wrong. My point is that is something that a board could oversee. That's something a board could have stepped in and said, no, this is not a good idea. This is what we should do. So that's what I'm looking at there. That's just one instance. But I feel like as county commissioners that, so to speak, I mean, I don't like having, I think that we answer to the people and that it is our job, and we should be more transparent. I think the more that everybody sees what we're doing, then the less that people think that we're doing something behind their back. Does that make sense? Does that make sense to everyone? All right. Anybody got something to say? Commissioner Stevens?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Who does the Juvenile Detention Center report to now? Like, who makes the hiring and firing decisions over there?
Davenport.
And was that set up by resolution by the commission, or is that just the way that it's being done?
No, it was set up by the commission back in the 90s, I believe. Go ahead, Commissioner McAdoo, you know.
I don't remember that resolution, but it could have came in under the judicial side. Maybe the judges got together and made a decision without the Board of Commissioners. I don't recall a resolution where that we could give a judge that power. I just don't recall it. But I do have a question. What do Davidson County do? They got a juvenile detention center. What do the municipalities do?
I don't want to give you an answer I don't know. So I'm going to be honest with you. I'll make sure I have that for you. But to my understanding, the answer is I believe they have Mayor, do you know if they have a board on that, or?
I don't know.
I'll find out for you, Alan.
In other words, we're growing. If we make a decision, we need to look at the decision based on the way we're growing. That right now we're county roughly 350,000. You know, we're going up. So therefore, we may want to look at some of the municipalities that have juvenile detention centers to see what they do.
Sure. Well, just kind of give you an idea, Commissioner Stevens, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to follow up on that. I think I'm indifferent one way or another to changing it. There's pros and cons I see each way just looking at it from 30,000 feet up, but without even knowing why we're doing the way we're doing now, I don't feel comfortable voting on anything tonight to ask our General Assembly to do a private act for us. I think we need to get some more answers first, and if we wait and do it next month, it might be too late to get something done. And I hate to push it off for another year if that's what everybody wants to do, but I'm just not sure that we have enough answers tonight to really take any kind of action. At least I don't feel comfortable doing it.
Well, I'm not asking for any action. I'm asking for the commission. First of all, what I want to do is I want the county attorney to tell us exactly what we can do as far as a board. Second thing that I want to do is for you commissioners to come back next month and let's think about what we got to do. Let's come back next month, and then we'll be ready to make either go with it or don't go with it. So I feel like that's what I want to do, is bring it up for discussion, and make you commissioners aware of it. Commissioner Reed?
Mr. Chairman, this was brought up in public safety, and I think we've had somewhat of the same discussion that night as what we're having here. And I think you're exactly right that we need to come back here with some answers that of what it looks like, and maybe, and I think Commissioner McAdoo hit it on the exactly. We need to look at what's being done elsewhere, and which also would give us some ideas of what we need to do as well, to give us some insight in what we can do and do from there. But I think what everybody is trying to look at here is to see some type of operation where it's not just that one person is taking care of everything, where it looks like when you got an operation as big as what that entire juvenile detention area is, it may take some more eyes in what we're trying to do. And I think that was the general purpose of why it was brought up in public safety, and getting some more involvement there, as well as the transparency in what we're trying to work with in that area. And I think that would be the better that we do bring this back, give everybody time to look at it, give us time to maybe get some input from some other individuals.
Anybody else? Commissioner Heather?
There's not a person in this room on this committee that does not want to be transparent and tell it the way it is. I'm going to try to reword my question a little bit. You've got judicial and you've got detention. So if we have a board that oversees detention, I'm like Commissioner Stevens, I'm kind of indifferent to that. My thing is, if a judge puts an order out, sends it to the sheriff and police chief or whoever, here's what happens when you're going to write a citation to a juvenile, that they're not to get the citation, they're to go before me as a judge. The board, that whether we choose to do it, let's say we do, the board has no say-so, because that's judiciary. But the judge issues that order that we have no control over, and we're in the same boat we're in right now, or have been in the last year or so. So how...
Yeah.
If a judge issues the order, right or wrong, let's assume or pretend it's wrong, the board that we choose can do nothing, nor this commission.
Correct.
So that's where my sticking point is. A judge issues an order that may be wrong and illegal and gets us into a lawsuit that costs taxpayers. We have no control. So
I think you're misunderstanding. When it comes to the judicial, we have no say. I mean, we have no say in that. But when it comes to running the judicial building, whether it's AC, hiring, firing, that can be controlled by a board.
yes, but we didn't get in a lawsuit because of an AC or whatever else in the detention center. It was a judge allegedly that made an order, and I read it, I saw it. We have no control over that. So in my mind, I think we need to go back to the oversight on the judiciary side and see where the breakdown was. Because there was definitely a breakdown. We've got some very, very good judges and smart judges, intelligent, brilliant minds, that who would say to the juvenile judge in the future, hey, you can't do that. But apparently, or allegedly, a judge did decree that order, and here's where we are. So I agree with the board to oversee the detention center. I get that. It makes sense. But my main thing is, how do we avoid this in the future? And the way I'm hearing it, the board will not prevent that from happening again, because they have no say-so. The judge does. The judiciary has say-so. So how do we avoid that again?
Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't think you'll ever avoid a judge giving orders to do something. I think by establishing a board, basically going out there, meeting once a month, going over their expenditure report, seeing what they're spending money on, et cetera, because that board would act as another, if you get 5 people on there, that's 10 more sets of eyes overseeing the money that's put into it by this commission. It's a feeling of comfort to the citizens of Rutherford County to feel more comfortable that it is more transparent to more people. It actually protects our director and assistant director and the staff out there, because if a judge does something that shouldn't be done, then by those board members going out there once a month, then maybe the director might feel a little more comfortable in speaking to one of those directors on that board, and then they in turn can call the attorney where they might feel intimidated to call the attorney, the county attorney, or even call the office of the courts where violations are reported on judges. State of Tennessee. It's just one more step of transparency. This board has no authority over the judicial side.
Anybody else? All right, here's what I'd like to do, gentlemen. I'd like to ask the county attorney to get the questions that we've had tonight, get them to us. Also, gentlemen, I'd like for you in the next 30 days that if we are able to do something like this, how would you like the makeup to be? And in my opinion, it's chairman of steering, or not chairman of public safety for sure, a judicial advocate, county attorney, law enforcement's county attorney, and there's all kind of ways we can make that up, how we want to do it. But that's something that I want you to have thought on. Give it thought. And if you're against doing this, then bring that up next meeting as well, because I have nothing but faith in this committee, that we'll do the right thing. So is there any more questions on this matter? None, let's move on. Ms. Stephenson, I want you to come do your report first, and then we'll do agenda number 11.
Good evening. So for the month of January, we had 4 ADA requests, where one was where I went to the city of Murfreesboro to their night court and somebody needed assistance within court. We have interpreters for hearing impaired and other type cases. So there were 4 of those. We conducted 4 different audits in our office, getting ready for the upcoming election, making sure that we have our poll workers, all of their paperwork complete and set up and ready to go. We did 23 different benefits-related activities for the employees in the month of January, 5 community involvement events, 4 other special events. We had 218 individuals in the county apply for leave, whether it be for family medical leave, COVID leave, or any other type leaves. We had 30 people to start in the month of January, and we had 39 people, I've reversed it, 30 people to leave the county in January, and we hired 39 new employees in January. We had 210 records requests. We received 1,256 applications. We had 248 special projects, paperwork and things that goes along with some special projects. We conducted 173 different tests on our employees for the month of January. We had 30 requests for interpreters for the court setting. We are seeing some new languages that we've not had before, Creole, Jamaican, I'm trying to think of Brazilian, 2 or 3, so we're getting new languages in the community. We've got about 39 languages that we serve already. And so we're adding some new ones this month. And we did 98 training sessions. Some of those were with the Solid Waste Department, and then also some others. So that's the report for the month of January. Are there any questions or other information that you would like to know?
Is there any? All right, I need a motion to approve this report. Chairman Cush. Chairman Reed. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Moving on. All right, the next on the agenda is talk about the social media policy that we have. One of the things that I want to look at is make sure that the county is completely clear on how we are for social media. I believe that if we are having jobs for a department head or certain jobs, then we should be able looking into our social media policy concerning those applicants before we make a decision. And one of the things that I want to look at is what is the current policy now? And are we able, and this will be a two-part question for the county attorney and for our department, Ms. Sonya. So let's talk about that, and then I'd like y'all's input on this as well. So Sonya, go ahead and try to answer that very broad question I gave you.
So the social media policy, when I saw it on the agenda, there's two parts to the social media. There's the social media piece that we actually updated and brought forth before the commission probably about 6-7 months ago. Our PIO, we broke out some pieces for the PIO that they would handle from a social media perspective, and then those items that were handled within the HR department as it relates to social media. So we've recently updated that, and it really just talks about what is appropriate for our employees, you know, who speaks on behalf of the county, who in each department speaks on the behalf of the county, and how it represents as far as that goes. And so from that standpoint in the social media, we have recently just updated that, and I think, unless I'm wrong, Mayor Ketchum probably remembers as well, I think that policy is still in good standing as far as I know. The second piece to the question is the social media as it relates to applicants and recruiting, in our recruiting process. I wouldn't say in the recruiting process. Currently, our application, you know, we ask questions, you know, where you live, those type things, where you've worked, what type activities and positions that you've been in, who your references are, and those type things. And our application does authorize, and the applicant authorizes and acknowledges that the county may conduct any background checks and screenings that we need to ensure that they're the best applicant for the position. So that is a process that we already have in place that is on our applications, that any applicant who applies with Rutherford County, they already have that within their application. It's also part of our employee handbook under recruitment and hiring, and so that is outlined in there as well. When you get into the timing of when you do your background checks and evaluations, historically, those have been done post-interview, pre-offer, and the candidate who is selected knows that their continued employment with the county is contingent upon its successful background check. So if we wanted to change that practice, that would be something that obviously we'd need a policy and structure in place. I reviewed what some of the sister agencies are doing, Knox County, Hamilton, those type things, Metro Nashville. I also contacted my benefits channel, who we use for our onboarding and offboarding process, and Smart Hire is the agency that we use for our job applications, and talked to their legal counsel as well to see what their recommendations, and their recommendations are what our current practice would be post-interview, pre-offer, before we conducted any of those checks. So obviously, if y'all wanted to do something different, that would be a policy that you'd need to put in place, and that is the recommendation, that if you made that choice, that we needed to have clear guidelines for the Human Resources Department to follow and the departments to follow if we were going to do something different.
Would we be able to have specific language in our policy that would give us pre-applicant on this instead of post-applicant?
You mean pre-interview?
Or pre-acceptance?
So pre-interview, some of the processes that take place pre-interview would be to contact references that have been provided by the applicant, to contact employers that they have given us permission. The applicant has the ability to say, don't contact this employer, or do, and if they say don't, then we can't. Those type things are usually pre-interview, and the items that I saw in my research from either legal seminars or the attorneys for these other agencies or other processes, I'm not seeing that the other county agencies and governmental agencies are doing it pre-interview.
Well,
I mean, obviously, if this body wanted to do that, again, we would just need a structure for doing that.
Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was talking to Bill Cope this morning at the board meeting at the Correctional Work Center, and because they order not only drug tests, but they do drug tests, background check, and they do psych test.
Physicals, right.
And because they have to make sure that they can pass the psychological test as well. So they go ahead and choose the person, but by the time they get the psychological test, which takes longer than the others, there's about a 10-day lead time in between. And if that information comes back during that lead time, then they don't go in and start filling out all the paperwork and everything else. And could we spread it apart from the time that we make the offer to the person till we find out, and that gives us time to look on social media? And I think the private sector companies do that after the offer has been made, and it gives you a little bit more time to find out about the background check, because it's kind of tough after you tell somebody, go ahead and here's your test. 3 days later, you come back and say, oh, your background check came back and we can't keep you anymore. I think it might help us. I know there's a need to get employees, but it might save some confusion and embarrassment even for the person applying for the position.
I agree with you 100%. Our recommendation always is that they give us 2-week notice after they hire somebody for us to get all the screening processes done. But to your point, the hiring needs have been so great that they have said, you know, can we start somebody? And for law enforcement, it's a little bit different. What they have, Governor Haslam put a law into place a couple of years ago, and it does specifically give law enforcement corrections the ability to do some additional checks that other employers cannot. And so for them, as far as what they do, they have access through the TBI to do their checks in advance of. So that is something that the Correctional Work Center and the Sheriff's Office already has the capability under this law, under this the act by Governor Haslam. So it would be our preference is that once they notify us that they've hired somebody, that we could do all of the new hire paperwork and wait that 2 weeks, because typically a background check, once they go, we have that back usually within 24, 48 hours. If it takes longer than 24 to 48 hours, sometimes there's something that they're analyzing to make sure. Maybe it's a name that, you know, lots of people are John Doe, so they're looking at several John Does to make sure it's the correct John Doe before they send us the information. So the background checks will come back typically within a couple of days. Drug screen is within 24, 48 hours as well. The MMPIs for law enforcement and corrections does take a little bit longer because they are meeting with a licensed clinician. And right now, we only have the one clinician, the one that we had before through volunteer, behavioral is no longer in our area, so I am actively looking for other clinicians to speed up that process for our sheriff's office. So,
And the guidance center is now cutting that out as well, I heard today.
and so we have found an agency that Mount Juliet is currently using, and we have reached out to them, and so we're waiting on some additional information, so that may be an alternative. But for the rest of the departments, it would be ideal if we waited the 2 weeks until we got all of our paperwork, because I agree with you. Nothing's harder for me to do than to have that conversation with somebody who we've already got started. But they know if their stuff is not back that it's contingent upon that, so that's the hard part.
So when we interview someone for a management position in law enforcement or any position, department head or a higher management job, how many interviews does it take before you decide on that?
Well, each agency does a little bit different process, and I don't mean to say that we're not all following the same steps, but the the sheriff's office, as I understand it, has a hiring board, and they select, depending on what division that they're hiring, they'll bring in supervisors from other divisions to sit in on their interviews. And so sometimes there will be multiple interviews. There may be, 1, 2, 3 interviews before they get to their final selection. When I hire somebody in the Human Resources Department, specifically for my department, I will have an initial interview and include department heads throughout the county, because I look at the departments as my customers, and I want to make sure that we're providing a good service. So I will have department heads come in, and then my second interview will be with constitutional officers. So it could be with Mr. Beatty or Ms. Kroll or Ms. Dahlbarn or somebody like that to sit in, because like I said, they're my customers, so I want to make sure that they have a good working rapport. So I think the departments, based upon their operations, will do the similar processes, but they will include different individuals. Sometimes I'm asked to sit in. If it's going to be a supervisory, myself or Lindsay is asked to sit in on interviews, and it just really depends on the position. Not that we do a different process for everybody. We do the same process. It's just handled in a different way.
So is it safe to say, or is it even possible, that if you get through number 1 interview, we're obviously interested, all right, why can we not start doing our background checks and start doing our vetting right then?
So you could. The cost associated with that, though, is one of the things that we try to be mindful of, because there is a cost involved. And so we try to make sure that we only send those individuals for background checks and screening that, we're going to make the offer to. But it's not that we couldn't change that. We could absolutely change that process. There would just be an additional cost involved.
Commissioner Cush, Chairman Cush,
Well,
sorry.
Thank you. Sonya just touched on one of the items I want to talk about, because I think we had this conversation in steering a year ago about the cost of a background check, and I want to say back then I wanted maybe $75 or give or take. It's real money. It adds up to real money real fast. But my second question was, do we have a 30-day, if we needed a spot and the person went through a couple of interviews and we vetted them and we think they're the right hire and we offered them and they accepted, is there a 30-day kind of a trial that we have with people in case then a background check or something comes up that you're not what you really said you are? Do we have a 30-day employment kind of a clause that we can?
So to answer your question, what we have is in the offer letter, it will say, if we don't have the screenings back, their offer letter will say it's contingent upon your successful completion of all your screenings as required by the position. Because positions are different. Our corrections facility will have physicals, and they'll have their MMPIs. Obviously, we want to make sure they're fit for duty, and so depending on where you're hiring for, what the screenings that we do for solid waste are totally different than what we would do for correctional work center, or what we would do in building codes would be different than what we would do at the sheriff's office, only because of the nature of the job that they're in. So the screenings would look different. The other thing that the county has is the probationary and training period. We have a 1-year probation and training period, and that's also part of the process, is to make sure that the employee is a good fit for the county, and that the county is a good fit for the employee, because it's got to work both ways. Both parties have to enjoy what they're doing and feel like the training is going well. So we have that as well. So we have some pieces in place to make sure that, we have a process to follow.
Well, let's do this. We don't have to make a decision tonight. Sonya, I'd like to get cost for doing a background check. I'd also like to see a cost for doing social media background check. County Attorney, we'd like you to look in the legal as to what we can and can't do. And then bring that back to us on the March meeting. Is that enough time?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Cush?
Just a legal question. Do we have to divulge to a candidate that we are going to do a background check, or we're going to search you out on social media? Do we have to divulge that is a process that the county is going to partake?
I believe so.
Absolutely. When I said you had to create a policy about what you're going to, we had to have a structure.
And we do. The application materials already have a paragraph in it where they acknowledge that we're going to do those things, those background checks. And
Well, they have to sign it. They have to sign that they acknowledge, so.
So couldn't it be the offer be made, Mr. Chairman, on a conditional basis?
I think so. I mean, what I'm concerned with, gentlemen, is the simple fact that we have applicants, good ones, and if they get to second and third, they're good. And then we have a situation where we lose an applicant. Once we offer a job and then we lose somebody, that's the thing that concerns me.
Just make them the offer, but tell them and get them sign a form, say, it's conditional upon your background check, and you won't start until we get that back.
I agree with that.
So is that what this conversation is about tonight, is the ability to have that flexibility?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Right?
And when we do have some language that gives us the ability to do that. So
Okay.
I think they just want to make sure.
Because from the private side, I clearly understand where you're coming from. If you've got qualified candidates, some aren't going to wait around a couple of weeks. Man, if the next job offer is there, bang, they're gone. So if that's the case, I'm happy to support language where we have that flexibility to capture the person we want, get them signed up, but yet contingent upon you passing the muster of the candidate we're looking for.
So we good? County Attorney? Ms. Stephenson?
Yes, sir.
We good?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, gentlemen, is there any other business? Seeing none, this meeting's adjourned.